October 14, 1943. The sky over Schweinfurt is the color of cold steel. Staff Sergeant Daniel Danny Mercer grips the yoke of his battered B-17 flying fortress as flak blossoms around him, black flowers exploding at 25,000 feet. The aircraft shudders violently. Aluminum skin tears somewhere behind him with a scream like ripping canvas. He tastes blood where he's bitten his lip. Hold formation, he mutters, not to the crew but to himself. Below, the ball-bearing factories burn. All smoke coils upward, mixing with cloud and cordite. The bomb run is complete, but survival is not guaranteed. Not today. Not over Germany. Fighters. 11 o'clock high. The top turret gunner shouts. Messerschmitts dive through the sun. Danny sees them only for a second. Sleek shapes. Crosses on their wings, then tracers slash past the cockpit glass. 120mm round punches through the nose compartment. The navigator goes silent. The B-17 bucks like a wounded animal. To his right, another fortress drifts too close. Calcined Lucky Bell. Its left wing is shredded. Smoke trails from two engines. They are less than 50 feet apart. Too close for bombers flying 150 miles per hour. Easy, easy. Danny breathes. The formation is collapsing. Aircraft are falling away, spiraling toward the earth in flames. But the two fortresses, his and Lucky Bell, remain locked in the same pocket of sky, wounded and staggering. Another explosion. The impact slams Danny's aircraft sideways. Metal shrieks. For a frozen second, he thinks they've collided. But they haven't. Not yet. Engine 3's gone. The flight engineer yells. Hydraulics failing. Danny glances left again. Lucky Bell is drifting closer, its pilot clearly fighting for control. The two bombers are being pushed together by the slipstream and failing control surfaces. Two massive aircraft. 4,000 pounds of bombs already gone. Crews of 10 men each. And nowhere to go. Then the unthinkable happens. Lucky Bell's wingtip clips Danny's stabilizer. The sound is not an explosion. It is a grinding, tearing roar like two freight trains scraping together at altitude. Both aircraft jerk violently. The control column rips in Danny's hands. The cockpit fills with smoke and shattered plexiglass. Cold air screams through the cabin. They are no longer flying. They are falling. Below them, miles beneath the chaos, German anti-aircraft crews reload calmly. And in a nearby rail yard outside Schweinfurt, a group of female prisoners, French resistance workers assigned to forced labor, look up at the sky. They see two American bombers tangled together, spiraling down. One of the women whispers in disbelief. They're holding each other. At 20,000 feet, Danny realizes something impossible. The two B-17s are still physically locked together, and somehow, they are not breaking apart. Not yet. The two fortresses fall together locked in metal, and fire over the outskirts of Schweinfurt. Inside Danny Mercer's B-17, the world is sound and vibration. Wine howls through the shattered cockpit glass. The control yoke shakes violently in his hands. Warning lights flicker. The altimeter unwinds faster than he has ever seen. Altitude 20,000, dropping fast. The co-pilot, Lieutenant Harris, shouts. Danny doesn't answer. He can't take his eyes off the left wing. Lucky Bell is fused to them, its right wing embedded through Danny's tail assembly like a broken spear. Pieces of aluminum skin flutter away into the sky. Control cables hang exposed, snapping in the slipstream. Two bombers, one twisted machine, falling. Feather what engines you can, Danny orders. The flight engineer fights the throttles. Engine 3 is dead. Engine 4 sputters, coughing black smoke. Only two engines are producing partial power. Across the torn gap between aircraft, Danny sees movement. The cockpit of Lucky Bell is visible just yards away. He locks eyes with the other pilot for a brief, impossible second. The man's face is pale. His mouth moves, but Danny cannot hear him over the roar. They are strangers. Now they are bound together. Another flak burst detonates nearby, rocking both aircraft. Shrapnel slices through Lucky Bell's fuselage. A gunner tumbles out, lost instantly to the sky. Danny forces himself not to look down. Can we separate? Harris asks. Danny knows the answer before he speaks. If we do, we rip each other apart. Below them, the German countryside sharpens into detail fields. Rail lines, factory roofs. The descent is slowing slightly. The locked wings are creating drag. The two bombers are stabilizing into a grotesque, gliding formation. It is impossible, and yet it is happening. Altitude 15,000. Danny tests the controls carefully. The rudder responds barely. The elevators are sluggish, but not gone. Somehow, the twisted wreckage is acting like a crude brace, preventing total structural failure. Across the sky, other B-17s limp westward toward England. Some trail smoke, some burn. These two remain alone. Below, near a rail yard filled with freight cars, French female prisoners pause from loading scrap metal. Guards shout at them to keep working, but even the guards stare upward now. Two American bombers locked together, descending like a single wounded bird. One of the women, her head shaved, whispers a prayer. At 10,000 feet, Danny makes a decision no manual has ever prepared him for. We're going to ride it down. Harris stares at him. In Germany, Danny nods once. If we bail out, we scatter. If we stay, maybe we control the crash. The other pilot across the gap watches him, and slowly, he nods back. Two crews, one desperate understanding. The ground is rising fast, and neither bomber is designed to land like this. 8,000 feet, the vibration changes. Danny Mercer feels it through the solace of his boots, a deep, unstable shudder running the length of both aircraft. The twisted metal binding his B-17 to Lucky. Bell groans like a living thing. Flaps, Harris asks. Danny shakes his head. Too much drag. We lose lift, we spin. They are no longer falling vertically. The combined wreckage has settled into a shallow, unstable glide. The right wing of Lucky Bell acts like a crude brace, jammed through Danny's shattered tail section. It keeps them aligned but barely. Smoke fills the cockpit in thin gray ribbons. Behind them, someone is praying. Altitude 6,000. Danny looks down for the first time. Fields, a tree line, rail tracks cutting across open ground, and beyond them low factory buildings outside Schweinfurt. Too many civilians, too many prisoners. He will not crash into buildings. Find me open ground, he says. Harris leans forward, scanning through cracked glass. 2 o'clock, past the rail yard. Danny banks slowly, carefully. The movement sends a violent tremor through both aircraft. Across the open gap between fuselages, he sees the other pilot struggling with his controls, fighting the same bank from his side. They are flying one machine with two broken brains. 3,000 feet. The interphone crackles uselessly. No communication between planes. Only eye contact. Only instinct. Suddenly, Lucky Bell's outer wing panel begins to tear. Metal peels back in strips. If it snaps free, Danny knows what happens. They roll. They burn. They die. Hold her together, Danny whispers. The field grows larger. Brown earth. Harvested crops. It will have to do. Gear, Harris asks. Danny hesitates. Landing gear could dig in, flip them. But belly landing to locked bombers might rip them apart instantly. 2,000 feet. Across the gap, the other pilot raises his hand. 3 fingers. Then 2. Then 1. He lowers something in his cockpit. Landing gear. Danny makes the decision. Drop it. The mechanism grinds. One main gear deploys. The other sticks halfway. Hydraulics scream. Lucky Bell's gear locks unevenly. They are no longer symmetrical. 1,000 feet. German soldiers are gathering near the rail yard fence. They point upward. Some run. In the yard, the women prisoners stand frozen, guards shouting at them uselessly. 500 feet. Danny pulls gently back on the yoke. For one suspended moment, the world is silent. Then, impact. The right side hits first. Metal shears. The locked wings twist violently. One engine rips free in a fireball. The two bombers slam across the field in a storm of dirt and debris. Inside the cockpit, Danny's world goes white. When he opens his eyes, everything is still. Smoke curls upward. Somewhere, ammunition cooks off in distant pops. He tries to move. He can. They are on German soil. And somehow, he is alive. The world returns in fragments. Smoke, dirt, the ticking of cooling metal. Danny Mercer hangs sideways in his harness, the cockpit tilted at an unnatural angle. The nose of his B-17 Flying Fortress is buried deep in torn earth. The smell of gasoline is sharp, metallic, dangerous. He unclips himself and drops hard against the instrument panel. Pain shoots through his ribs, but nothing feels broken. Report, he coughs. No answer from the navigator's station. Behind him, Harris groans, alive. Through the shattered cockpit frame, Danny sees the impossible shape of the two bombers still locked together, wings crushed and interwoven like broken bones. Lucky Bell's fuselage lies twisted against theirs, tail snapped clean off. A flicker of flame licks along spilled fuel. Out, everybody out. Danny shouts. He crawls through the torn side of the cockpit, boots slipping on all-soaked metal. The ground outside feels unreal solid, foreign, German soil. He stumbles clear as one of Lucky Bell's engines erupts in a sudden burst of flame. The explosion pushes him face first into the dirt. He rolls, coughing. Around him, men are emerging from hatches, dragging wounded. A waist gunner collapses onto his knees. Another crewman helps him, hands shaking. Across the wreckage, Danny spots the other pilot, blood running down the side of his face. Uniform torn. The man is already pulling his crew away from the burning section. Their eyes meet again. No words, just acknowledgement. Then shouting, German voices, from beyond the field. Soldiers sprint toward the crash site, helmets low, rifles ready, gray uniforms against autumn grass. A truck skids to a halt near the rail line. Danny's heart hammers. Hands up, Harris whispers urgently. They are too far from any cover. Too exposed. Ammunition in the aircraft begins to cook off in sharp, violent cracks. Danny raises his hands slowly. One by one, the surviving airmen follow. A German sergeant approaches first, pistol drawn. His expression is not triumphant. It is stunned. He stares at the tangled bombers, then at the Americans standing beside them. Why? He mutters. How? Behind the soldiers, along the fence of the rail yard. Danny notices figures watching. Women, thin, heads covered with scarves were shaved bare. Work uniforms marked with faded patches. Guards try to push them back, but they continue staring at the wreck. One woman steps slightly forward before a rifle but forces her back. Her eyes meet Danny's. Not hatred, not fear. Something closer to disbelief. The Americans are searched roughly. Flight jackets removed. Pistols confiscated. Dog tags checked. A German corporal looks at the fused aircraft again, shaking his head slowly. 2 planes, he says quietly to his sergeant. 1 crash. The sergeant nods. Danny keeps his hands raised as soldiers bind them behind his back. He glances once more at the burning wreckage. They had no chance, and yet, they had survived the sky. They are marched across the churned field under rifle guard, boots sinking into soft German earth. Behind them, the wreckage of the WWII flying fortress still burns to giants reduced to twisted skeletons. Ammunition pops inside the fuselages like distant firecrackers. Smoke rises in a thick black column that can be seen for miles around Schweinfurt. Danny keeps his eyes forward. He counts his men silently. Harris, the flight engineer, 2 gunners, 5 from Lucky Bell. Not all. He does not allow himself to look back again. The German soldiers move efficiently. No shouting now, no anger, just procedure. Pistols remain drawn. One soldier prods a wounded American forward with the muzzle of his carabiner 98K. Danny steps slightly closer to the wounded man, steadying him with his shoulder. A rifle but presses into Danny's back in warning. He doesn't move away. Ahead, the rail yard comes into clearer view. Freight cars sit half-loaded with scrap metal and machinery. Barbed wire fencing encloses one section of the yard. The women are still there. Thin faces, hollow cheeks, civilian coats hanging loose on narrow frames. Some wear wooden clogs. Guards bark at them in sharp German. But the women are not watching the guards. They are watching the Americans. Danny feels at the weight of their gaze. A German sergeant halts the column near the fence. An officer speaks briefly with another man wearing a black leather coat. Gestapo, Danny assumes. Papers are exchanged. The Americans are ordered to stand in a line. A few yards away, the female prisoners are forced back toward their work piles. Yet they steal glances, whispering urgently in French. One woman, dark hair shaved, unevenly stares opally at Danny. She cannot be older than 25. A guard notices and strikes her across the shoulder with a stick. She does not cry out. Danny's jaw tightens. He has bombed this city. He has watched factories burn. And yet these women do not look at him with hatred. They look at him like proof that the sky is not entirely German. The Gestapo officer approaches Danny first. You were pilot? He asks in clipped English. Yes. The officer studies him. 2 aircraft collided. Yes. You survived. Danny holds his gaze. Looks that way. The officer glances toward the wreckage, smoke still rising beyond the field. His expression flickers, not admiration, not respect, something more complicated. You will be questioned, he says. Danny nods once. Behind him, a German truck engine starts. The Americans are herded toward it. As Danny climbs into the back, he looks once more toward the fenced rail yard. The dark-haired woman meets his eyes again. For a brief second, she presses her hand flat against her chest. Then a guard forces her to turn away. The truck lurches forward. Danny does not know where they are being taken. He only knows one thing. The sky tried to kill him. Now the ground will try. The truck rattles through the narrow streets of Schweinfurt. Its steel bed cold beneath Danny Mercer's hands. Civilians line the sidewalks. Some stare in silence. Others shout. A boy throws a small stone that strikes the side of the truck and bounces harmlessly away. An elderly man removes his cap, not in respect, but in disbelief. The city smells of smoke and brick dust. Windows are shattered. Roof tiles lie broken along gutters. Danny sees the damage his formation caused. He feels it. No cheering. No triumph. Only consequence. Beside him, Harris leans closer. They're going to separate us. Danny nods slightly. Name, rank, serial number. That's it. The truck stops inside a courtyard surrounded by stone buildings. A faded Reich flag hangs over the entrance. The men are ordered down. Inside, the air is colder. Fluorescent lights buzz faintly overhead. Boots echo along tiled floors. The Americans are divided quickly to guards per prisoner. Danny is pushed into a small office. A desk, 2 chairs, a single window barred from the outside. The same Gestapo officer from the field enters moments later, removing his gloves with precise movements. "You are fortunate," he says calmly. "Many airmen do not survive such accidents." Danny says nothing. The officer sits, opens a folder. "You are targeting the ball-bearing works." "Yes." "You understand how many civilians work there?" Danny keeps his voice steady. "It's a military target." The officer studies him carefully. "And the women in the rail yard, also military." Danny feels something tighten in his chest. He does not answer. The officer leans back. "You saw them?" "Yes. They are French. Political prisoners. Sent here for re-education." Danny knows that word is a lie. Silence stretches. The officer folds his hands. "You and the other pilot made a decision to land together." "Yes." "Why?" Danny hesitates only a second. "If we separated, we'd both fall apart." The officer nods slowly, almost thoughtfully. "Interesting." He closes the folder. "You will be transferred to a Luftwaffe-run camp for airmen, provided you cooperate." Danny meets his eyes. "I've cooperated." The officer's faint smile returns. "For now." Hours later, Danny is marched back into the courtyard where the surviving crew members wait under guard. Some are bruised, one limps badly, but they are alive. A train whistle blows somewhere beyond the walls. As they are loaded into a covered truck again, Danny glances toward the distant rail yard visible between buildings. He cannot see the women, but he knows they are still there, behind wire, watching the same sky. The truck gate slams shut. The engine starts, and Danny realizes something chilling. He survived the crash, but captivity has only begun. Night falls as the train moves north. Inside the freight car, the air smells of damp wood, sweat, and cold iron. 20 American airmen sit on the floorboards, wrists still sore from the rough handling earlier that day. Danny Mercer leans against the wall, listening to the wheels hammer against the rails. Clack, clack, clack. Across from him, Harris shifts uncomfortably. "You think we're headed to a camp?" he asks quietly. Danny nods. "For airmen, the Luftwaffe usually runs them." "Usually." No one says what happens if it isn't. The train slows. Through the narrow slats of the wooden door, Danny sees dim lights sliding past outside. Another rail yard. More freight cars. Floodlights cutting through thin fog. Then he hears voices. Women. French. The train grinds to a stop. A guard slides the door open briefly to check inside. Cold night air pours into the wagon. Beyond the guards, Danny glimpses a familiar sight rows of prisoners, and loading scrap metal under harsh lights. It is another forced labor yard outside Schweinfurt. The women move slowly, shoulders bent beneath heavy loads. Danny recognizes one of them, the dark-haired prisoner from the crash site. Her head is shaved now down to pale stubble. Dirt streaks her cheeks, but the eyes are unmistakable. She sees him too. For a moment, everything around them fades: the guards, the lights, the shouting, just to survivors of the same sky. She whispers something to the woman beside her. The other prisoner glances toward the freight car and suddenly freezes. One of the guards notices. "Bider, move," he shouts, shoving them forward. But the dark-haired woman takes a small step closer before the guard reacts. Her voice is barely audible over the engine noise. "American." Danny nods once. The guard swings the butt of his rifle against the rail car. "Zurich." The women step back immediately. Before the door slams shut again, the dark-haired prisoner raises 2 fingers to her lips, then points briefly upward toward the sky. A gesture, small, dangerous. Danny understands instantly. The Allies will return. Bombers will return. Hope is still flying somewhere above the clouds. The door crashes closed. Darkness returns inside the freight car. The train lurches forward again. Harris exhales slowly. "You know her?" Danny shakes his head. "No." But he keeps seeing her expression. Not fear, not pity, expectation. The wheels continue their endless rhythm across the tracks. Somewhere ahead lies a prisoner of war camp run by the Luftwaffe. Behind them, women remain trapped in the rail yards of Germany. And above all of it, the war in the sky continues. Danny closes his eyes as the train disappears deeper into the darkness of occupied Europe. Dawn arrives pale and brittle. The train slows again, brakes screeching against cold steel. Danny Mercer feels the change in rhythm before he sees it. The freight car door slides open with a violent bang, flooding the interior with gray morning light. Rouse out. The Americans climb down stiffly onto packed dirt. Ahead of them stretches barbed wire double rows, tall, reinforced. Guard towers stand at measured intervals, machine guns mounted behind sandbags. A wooden sign hangs crooked near the entrance. Stalag Luft III. Danny exhales slowly. Luftwaffe camp. That matters. German Air Force personnel, not the Gestapo. Under the Geneva Convention, at least in theory, they are marched through the main gate. Inside, rows of low wooden barracks line muddy lanes. Prisoners in worn flight jackets and mismatched uniforms stand watching. Quietly, British, American, some with Red Cross, armbands sewn carefully onto sleeves. A corporal with Luftwaffe insignia on his collar reads names from a clipboard. Name, rank, serial number. Danny steps forward when called. Mercer, Daniel, Staff Sergeant, 38-2. Enough. His dog tags are checked, his pockets emptied. He surrenders his last small possession, a folded photograph of his wife in Ohio. The guard studies it briefly before handing it back. Keep. Danny nods. Inside Barrack 104, the air is stale but not brutal. Wooden bunks stacked 3 high. A small iron stove in the center. Faces turned toward the new arrivals. One older British flight lieutenant approaches. You lads from Schweinfurt? He asks quietly. Danny nods once. The lieutenant whistles under his breath. Bloody massacre. The words settle heavy in the room. The October 14th raid has cost dozens of bombers. Hundreds of airmen missing. Danny thinks of the sky that morning. Of Lucky Bell's wing tearing into his tail. Of the woman in the rail yard pointing upward. He sits on a lower bunk. For the first time since the crash, the adrenaline drains from his body. But rest does not come. Because even here, inside wire, war continues. Across the compound, prisoners dig gardens under supervision. Others walk in slow circles along worn paths. A guard tower shadow cuts across the yard like a blade. Harris leans closer. Think they'll try something? Danny studies the perimeter. The fences are high. The sand beneath them looks freshly turned. Escape attempts have happened here before. Will happen again. They always do, Danny replies quietly. Later that afternoon, as he stands in the yard for roll call, he hears something distant. A faint drone. Engines. Heads tilt upward across the compound. High above the clouds, barely visible, bombers pass west to east. American, British. Danny feels something stir inside his chest. The guards glance upward nervously. The war is still alive above the wire. And somewhere in Germany, women are still watching the same sky. Winter tightens its grip on Stalag Luft III. Snow settles into the barbed wire, clinging like frostbitten fingers. The compound is quieter now. Hunger dulls conversation. Faces grow thinner. Boots wear thin against frozen mud. Danny Mercer stands in the yard during morning roll call, breath turning to vapor in the cold air. Months have passed since the crash outside Schweinfurt. The sky that once tried to kill him now feels impossibly distant, yet the war still hums above. Inside Barrack 104, whispers have replaced small talk. There is digging. Careful, patient, silent. The British officers lead it. Americans assist. Tin cans become shovels. Bed boards become tunnel braces. Sand is hidden in sock sand scattered during walks around the yard. Danny did not volunteer at first. He told himself survival was enough. But one night, lying awake beneath the thin blanket, he remembers the woman in the rail yard, her fingers pointing upward, her expectation. Hope requires action, so he joins. He crawls into the narrow tunnel entrance beneath the stove, pushing himself forward through suffocating darkness. The earth smells damp and metallic. The ceiling is barely inches above his back. Every scrape of wood sounds like thunder. Above them, German guards pace with rifles. Below them, prisoners inch toward possibility. One evening during roll call, floodlights sweep across the compound. A siren wails somewhere beyond the camp. Bombers again. The guards glance uneasily toward the sky. Anti-aircraft fire begins in the distance, deep, echoing thumps. Danny stands motionless in formation, staring upward. He imagines the bombers crossing Germany. Imagines Schweinfurt. Imagines the rail yard. Is she still alive? The sirens fade. The night grows still again. Later, back in the barrack, word spreads quietly. The tunnel is nearly complete. 300 feet. It reaches beyond the wire, into a thin line of trees. Danny runs his fingers across the rough wood brace beside him. It trembles faintly. Freedom is a fragile thing, but it exists. That night, he cannot sleep, because escape means risk, not just for him. If discovered, punishments will follow. Rations cut. Privileges revoked. Collective punishment. He thinks again of the woman struck by a rifle but for stepping forward. He understands something now. Captivity is designed to make men smaller. The tunnel is an act of refusal. Outside, Wind moves through frozen branches. Inside the earth beneath the barrack floor, the final brace is set into place. The night chosen for escape approaches, and Danny must decide: remain safe behind wire, or step once more into a hostile German sky. March 1944. The snow has hardened into ice around Stalag Luft III. The wind cuts through wool and bone alike. Inside Barrack 104, the stove is moved quietly. The tunnel mouth waits beneath the dark, narrow final. Danny Mercer stands near the entrance, gloves pulled tight over trembling hands. Around him, British and American airmen whisper final instructions. Civilian coats dyed with tea. Forged travel passes tucked into boots. Compasses hidden in buttons. Harris grips Danny's shoulder. Still time to back out. Danny shakes his head. He thinks of the sky over Schweinfurt. Of the B-17s locked together in impossible descent. Of the woman in the rail yard pointing upward. Survival is not enough. The first man disappears into the earth. Then another. Then another. Hours pass in silence broken only by distant boots in the snow above. When it is Danny's turn, he lowers himself into the tunnel, pushing forward on elbows and knees. The walls press against his ribs. The air grows thin quickly. Every breath tastes of soil. The wooden braces creak softly. He counts heartbeats to steady himself. Above him, Germany sleeps, or pretends to. At last, a faint draft touches his face. The tunnel slopes upward. A whisper ahead, nearly there. Danny reaches the exit point, but something is wrong. The opening stops short of the tree line. Snow drifted deeper than expected. The final stretch lies exposed under open moonlight. One by one, men emerge cautiously from the hole, dropping flat against the white ground. Danny pulls himself free last. The camp fence looms behind him in shadow. Guard towers stand silent for now. He crawls toward the trees, snow soaking through his thin coat. Halfway there, a shout. A flashlight beam slices across the field. Halt! Gunfire cracks through the frozen air. Men scatter. Danny runs. His boots slip. Breath burns his lungs. Another shot snaps past his ear. He dives behind a low embankment as flares ignite overhead, turning night into cruel daylight. Around him, shadows move, some falling, some still running. The camp siren screams. Searchlights sweep across the snow. Danny presses himself flat against the frozen earth, heart pounding violently. For a moment, he considers surrender. Then he remembers two bombers refusing to separate in the sky. He remembers a woman refusing to look away. He crawls again, into darkness. Behind him, chaos erupts at the wire. Ahead lies forest. Beyond that trail lines. And somewhere in Germany, women still watch the sky. The flares burn out one by one. Gunfire fades into the distance. Danny does not stop moving, because once before, he survived the impossible. And tonight, he will try again.